We are moving on to chapter 2. If you hear some noise in the background, they have a toy. Okay, so we're on chapter 2 of Family Under the Bridge, and you should be on page 9. Okay, so we talked yesterday at the very end. Armin went to the bridge where he spends every winter. He has this one spot he always camps out at, and there was a group of children there. And the oldest one was like, "You can't take us, we're staying together." So let's see what happens today. As Armin glared at the children, a shaggy dog that should have been white came bounding across the quarry. Okay, if the dog should have been white, that tells us it's not white right now. So be thinking, what color do you think this dog might be, since he should have been white, but he's not? It protectively jumped between the tramp and the children, barking fiercely at Armin. The hobo quickly maneuvered his buggy between himself and the dog. So remember, tramp in this book means what? It means it could be a homeless person, a beggar, someone that's looking funny or different. So remember, that's what that means in this book. "If that beast bites me," he cried, "I'll sue you for 10,000 francs. The girl called the dog to her. "Here, Jojo, come, Jojo. He won't take us away. He's only an old tramp." The dog stopped barking and sniffed at the wheels of Armin's baby buggy. The man was insulted. "I'll have you know I'm not just any old tramp," he said, and he wasn't. "I'm the friendliest, and I could be a working man right now if I wanted. But where are your parents, and who are you hiding from? The police?" So now we have a picture. And in the picture, Jojo looks mostly white, but he's not all white. So be thinking, okay? So we see some children, we see Armin, and we see Jojo, okay? He studied the children closely. Redheads they were, all of them. And their clothes had the mismatched, ill-fitting look of poverty. The older girl's eyes burned in deep blue. "Our landlady put us out because we didn't have enough money to pay for the room since Pa died," she explained. "So Mama brought us here because we haven't any home now. And she told us to hide behind the canvas so nobody could see us. So they take us away from her and put us in a home for poor children. But we're a family, so we want to stay together. I'm Susie, and they're Paul and Evelyn." The boy swaggered a little. "If I was bigger, I'd find a new place for us to live," he boasted. "It looks to me like you've already found a new place," said Armin, "and it's my old place. You've put me out of my home just like that landlady did to you." Susie was apologetic. She moved the pushcart over and measured Armin with one eye closed. Then she carefully drew a long rectangle on the concrete with a piece of soft coal. "That's your room," she said. "You can live with us." On second thought, she scrawled a small checkered square at the foot of the rectangle. "There's a window," she said gravely, so you can look out and see the river." So be thinking about this. It sounds kind of silly, but she's little, right? They're young kids. They're like, "Well, you can live with us. Sorry we took your spot. We know what it's like to not have a home. You can live with us." And she's like, "Here, I'll draw you a room, and here's a little window for you." Armin grumbled to himself and pulled his coat tighter across his chest, as if to hide his heart. Oh, this starling was a dangerous one. He'd better move on. Paris was full of bridges. The way the Seine meandered through it, no trouble finding another one. But as he started away, the girl ran over and... Sorry, I have tags in front of this. And clutched him by his torn sleeve. "Please stay," she begged. "We'll pretend you're our grandfather." Armin snorted. "Little one," he said. "Next to a millionaire, a grandfather is the last thing I hope to be." But even as he grumbled, he began unpacking his belongings. He stacked the branches of twigs and made a pile of the dead leaves he had gathered. He pulled out a dirty canvas and a rusty iron hook. He set a blackened can with a handle near the leaves. He sorted some bent spoons and knives. Last of all, he pulled out an old shoe with a hole in the sole. "Might come across the mate one of these days," he explained to the children, "and it fits me just right." So, here's a little hint. That shoe's going to come up later in our story. Maybe not today, but down the road. And so he found this old shoe. It has a hole in the bottom, but it fits him. So he's like, maybe I'll come across its mate someday. So the other shoe. The children wanted to help him. Oh, these starlings were clever. They knew how to get around an old man. Lucky he wasn't their grandfather, but he laid his canvas over the rectangle Susie had made for him. He started a fire with the branches and dead leaves. Then he hung a big can over the fire. Into it, he dropped scraps of food he unwrapped from pieces of newspaper. In the good old days of Paris, he told the children, they used to ring bells in the marketplace at the close of the day so the tramps would know they were welcome to gather up the leftovers, but no more. Nowadays, we have to look after ourselves. They watched him eating his food. Even the dog that should have been white watched with each morsel that went into his mouth and drooled on the concrete. Armin wriggled uneasily. What's the matter? He said gruffly. Haven't you ever seen anybody eat before? They said nothing in reply, but 4 pairs of eyes followed each move of his tin spoon. I suppose you're hungry, he growled. Starlings always have to be eating. Get your tinware. Susie pulled some stained, cracked bowls and twisted spoons from the pushcart. Armin carefully divided the food, even counting in the dog. It was dark by the time the children's mother joined them. The lights of Paris were floating in the river, but the only light in the tunnel flickered from the tiny fire Armin had made. He could not see the woman's face, but he felt the edge of her tongue. So this is an idiom, okay? He felt the edge of her tongue. Obviously, he didn't actually feel the edge of her tongue. He couldn't see her because it was dark out and they just had light from this little fire, but he felt the edge of her tongue, meaning he could tell that she was angry, okay? What are you doing here? She demanded of the hobo. Armin was angered. And I might ask you the same, madam, he retorted. You have taken my piece of the bridge. So here in our picture, you can see Armin divvying out his food to the children. The bridges don't belong to anybody, said the woman. They're the only free shelter in Paris. Susie tried to make peace. He's a nice, friendly old tramp, Mama, she explained, and he's going to live with us. I'm not a friendly old tramp, said Armin indignantly. I'm a mean, cranky old tramp, and I hate children and dogs and women. Then if you hate us, said Paul, why did you give us some of your food? Because I'm a stupid old tramp, replied Armin. Because I'm a stupid, soft-hearted old tramp. Ooh la la, there it was. He had let it slip that he really had a heart. Remember that. He let it slip that he really had a heart. Now, this homeless family would surely be after that too. The woman was displeased to hear that the children had accepted the hobo's food. We are not beggars, she reminded them. I have a steady job at the laundry, and that is more than he can say. She went to work warming a pan of soup and breaking a long loaf of bread that she had brought with her. Armin sat in the rectangle marked by Susie and thought that this woman's trouble was pride, and that pride and life under the bridge weren't going to work out well together. So he's saying if you have a lot of pride, meaning you think too highly of yourself, you can't be doing that and be living a life as a homeless person, because you're not going to accept help when you need it, and you're not going to be willing to listen to advice that other people have. By the dying light of the fire, the woman went back and forth with her push cart, pulling out moth-eaten blankets and making bed places on the concrete. Just overhead, the automobiles roared. Lights garlanded the bridge, and people walking along the higher quarry laughed lightly. But it could have been a million miles away from the little group under the bridge. You ought to put the starlings in some charity home until you find a place of your own, madam, suggested Armin after the children had dropped off to sleep. This life is not for them. Now you wouldn't want them to end up like you, would you? Families should stick together through the lean times and as well as the fat. So she's saying they need to stick together in bad times and good times, replied the woman. And I have hopes. I'm going to see my sister-in-law soon. She may know of a place for us out in Clichy. Armin stretched out on his canvas without bothering about any covering. He was used to the cold. He never felt it anymore, but he was sure these children would feel it. As he lay on the hard concrete, an uneasy thought worried him, like a mouse gnawing on a shoestring. Now that he had befriended these starlings, his life would never again be completely his own. When gray morning seeped into the blackness under the bridge, Armin woke to find the woman gone and the 3 children feeding some stale bread to Jojo. "Are you still here?" asked Armin. "Don't you go to school or something today?" Susie shook her red head. "We can't go to school again until we get a place to live. Mama says the teachers might begin asking questions, then the people may take us away from her and put us in a home." "Your mama wants you around more than I do," said Armin. "Children should go to school. Where would I be today if I hadn't gone to school when I was a starling?" "Oh, I like school," said Susie, with her blue eyes glowing. "I like to read and write. I want to be a teacher when I get big. See, a man on the barge threw a piece of coal to me, and I use it for a pencil. I hope we'll soon be able to go back to school again." "Then that's where we're different," confessed Armand. "Never did like school, but you surely must go someplace during the day. Your mama can't expect me to be a nursemaid. I've got places to go, so being a nanny, kind of." "Oh, may we go with you?" begged Susie. "Evelyn is a real good little walker. She won't get tired." "No," cried Armand in alarm. "You can't go with me, and that's the whole cheese of it." So saying that's it. We're not arguing about it anymore. Final. "Please take us, old tramp," implored Paul. "It's so cold hiding down here with nothing to do." "That's not polite, Paul," warned Susie. "Now he won't take us with him unless you apologize." "But what can I call him?" asked Paul. "I don't know his name." "What is your name, monsieur?" asked Susie. "Armand," replied the hobo. "But your last name?" asked Paul. "Ours is Cowsit." Armand shrugged his shoulders. "I've forgotten," he admitted. "I think it used to be Polly or Poggy, something like that. Just call me Armand." "All right, Monsieur Armand," said Paul. "I apologize for calling you an old tramp. Now will you take us with you?" "Of course he will," said Susie quickly. "He really has a good heart, even if it looks so bad." "And may Jojo go too?" Armand clutched at the part of his coat covering his heart. Oh, these starlings were after it, all right. "Ooh la la," he exclaimed. "And where would I be seen with 3 children and a dog?" he demanded. "What friend would want me dropping in with such a company?" Then a sly look crossed the weather-beaten face. Perhaps it wouldn't be a bad idea to take these appealing fledglings out in the street with him. So a fledgling is a new word that we're hearing, a new way that he's referring to the children. No, indeed. He had a splendid idea. Of course it wasn't just the thing of which that proud mother would approve. "How would you like to go uptown to meet my friend Father Christmas?" he asked the children. They were so astonished that they couldn't speak for a few seconds. Susie's eyes grew bluer and bluer with wonder. "Father Christmas?" she finally exclaimed in a hushed voice. "The Father Christmas who brings presents at Christmas time?" Paul could hardly believe it. "Do you know Father Christmas?" he asked. "Mama said he won't bring us anything this year because he won't be able to find us," said Evelyn. "Then we're going right up to the Louvre department store," declared Armand, "to tell him where you're living. Now, get out your packet. Pause the video if you need to. Get out your packet and look at the questions for number 2. So I've stopped and talked about every single question on here, okay? And for number 5, you can find that on page 15, okay? Now look at the second page, page 4 at the top. So it says, page 4, chapter 2, vocabulary. So here is a little different than yesterday. Remember, I told you each day looks a little different. So here they give you a word, okay? So, well, for number 1 is a little different. They want you to answer this one, but look at number 2. Here they give you the word, they give you the definition, and they want you to use it in a sentence. They want you to create your own sentence, okay? So that's what you're doing for numbers 2 through 4. And then look at number 5. We talked about that word yesterday and today. It's a type of bird. It starts with an S. And then on number 6, I want to see which one you think is the best definition for how he used fledglings in this chapter. All right? Make sure this goes back. You take your pictures, submit your answers, and then put this back in your orange folder and put that back in your crate with your novel. Don't lose your things. Thanks, guys.